Hey everybody, Jose Rodriguez here with the Art of Defense podcast. Looking to bridge spirituality and martial arts together, and through discussions with other martial artists. I'm fortunate today to bring Greg Weller, a black belt in Shotokan Karate. He happens to be a friend of mine and also training here now. And so, low-hanging fruit, not that you're, not valuable. It's just I'm working with the people I know in my community and that sort of thing. But it brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. How old are you, Greg?
63 this year.
63. So I think one of my favorite proverbs is "The man speaks, listen. You have something to learn." So that's part of that essence of this podcast. But we're bridging the gap. And so we're going to ask questions that we've asked with our past guests and just, get your wealth of wisdom and experience and all that. So, Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to karate?
Let's see, I'm Shodan with Shotokan Karate of America. That means I'm a beginner. And let's see, married with children and a lot of grandchildren and very blessed in life now. I think it was, I'm going to jump ahead, I think it was fear that got me started in the martial arts initially.
What? Let me ask the question.
Yeah.
First, sorry, because we had a technical difficulty.
Jumped ahead.
But ultimately, what got you into martial arts in the first place? What brought it to your awareness?
Well, growing up where I did there in Los Angeles County, there were fights, and it was regular enough. And so, like, getting in a fight, that was not a fear factor for me.
What years was this?
Well, when I started practicing karate was 1991, July of 1991. That was my first day in the dojo, and it was the riots that were rolling down Whittier Boulevard towards my house.
The Rodney King riots?
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about it except what I saw on television, and that it was rolling down Whittier Boulevard and getting closer to my house. And I remember distinctly, I was not afraid for me, like getting in a fight or having to fight, but I felt ill-equipped to protect my wife and kids that were there at the time. And so I just started thinking and praying about that anxiety that I had. And I started, doing a little bit of research, and come to find there's this, I use the term Old Okinawan Karate Dojo, just a quarter mile from the house. And there were no trophies in the window that, and it was, when I went in there to interview them, it was expressed to me that it's not about the sport, right? It was, this is a samurai mentality training place. This is where you come to learn how to, when the bad guy comes to put me in the dumpster, the bad guy goes in the dumpster instead. That's exactly the way it was described to me. And so I decided I didn't have money to pay dojo dues. So they allowed me to do handyman work and whatever, to help around the dojo. And so I was able to get started. And very humble beginnings, and kind of being not athletically inclined person. I played sports as a young man, or as a kid, but I didn't really get into the athletic aspect. I would just work for a living, right? Just work. That was hard enough.
Sure.
But the first day I started in that Shotokan dojo, the whole practice was kicks. So an hour and a half of kicking. And I was pretty sure it was going to kill me.
Yeah.
But I just decided that day, I said, well, if then this is where I'm going to die. So, and I just keep coming back, and it's been a part of my life and my my culture, ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Were there other opportunities of other martial arts? Were you aware of any other martial arts back then?
There were a few. There was a Kempo dojo further down Whittier Boulevard, and I didn't learn that until after, right? I just went as far as that Shotokan dojo, and it just made sense.
Well, given
It
that
just
time, you don't want to probably stray too far from home.
correct.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I can certainly relate with the fact that, I mean, how long ago was that?
1991, July of 1991. So
40 years. Um, and well,
about
not
that,
even. Yeah,
pretty
30.
close.
Yeah. But what did it cost then? Do you remember?
Oh, it's like $35 a month, I think,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah,
And we're
it's very non-profit, for instance,
sure. Well,
and
and martial arts nowadays is probably north of $100 most places. And
well, it costs more to keep the lights on.
sure.
It costs more in rent,
Oh yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so I can see the adjustments
Well,
for that.
absolutely. And but I can relate to you because I often struggled. Um, in fact, when I got into martial arts, would have been third grade. Not to age you, but yeah, that would have been shoot about 89, 80, 89, around there, and it was because it was kind of free. It was a youth get kids off the streets program
Sure.
because I would probably turned into one of those rioting young men and learned to box and wrestle because I was already fighting and being ornery and so I can certainly understand that. But one of the things that's not lost on me in my school is that I wouldn't have been able to afford it. So we are a nonprofit to help make sure that those who can pay. Those who can't do just what you said. I have people that come in and clean the school, scrub the mats, fix things, and then I also have students that are gifted a subsidized scholarship to help because of course we got to keep the lights on. So yeah, that makes sense. How does your martial arts fit into your life now?
Well, there's just so many um, tactical ways of moving around in the world that just stuck with me. I saw examples where I'm working with one of my seniors and maybe even at his house, and when he reaches out to grab a ladder, there's this as he picks it up, right? So proper breathing, and as far as like lifting something or even just moving around, right? And drives my wife nuts, but when she wants me to help her bring stuff in, groceries or something, I refuse to overload myself. It just because a predator will see a person overloading and recognize that now that's a prime opportunity,
Huh.
right?
I never thought about it that way because I'm a overloaded. I'm still young. I can get it all in one fell swoop.
Yeah, I'm sure you can, and you could
but
probably bust somebody up at the same
I'm a
time.
young kid compared to you, which I just wanted to reflect on. I got to before we had this little interview. I got to sit in on your on your session with your sensei now that who I found it funny he called you young man because he's a little older than you.
Yeah.
But both of you in your 60s and still on the mat and getting after it for me is pretty inspiring. I'm 47. And I think martial arts, regardless of which one you pick, is going to be that, right? It's just going to always keep us younger than we would have if we didn't have it.
Correct.
I don't necessarily say that martial arts makes you live older, but it makes you live your potential, or even therefore increases your potential, right? Have you ever
That's
had
up,
to use your martial arts?
that's up to the individual
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
and how they apply
Yeah,
what
I
they
mean,
learn. Yeah,
I can hand you a book of wisdom,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you could be
yeah,
like, eh,
yeah.
and you don't read it, or you read it and then don't apply
Don't
it.
apply it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
There's the,
Absolutely. Has martial arts ever, has your martial arts ever had to be applied to life? Have you gotten it? Have you ever done a competition? You said yours was not about sports, so I'm assuming you've never done competition.
no, I did competitions, and
Okay.
I won all but one until I got black belt, and then I couldn't even get out of my own way. So, but that's okay. You know, it's a different level, and there's a lot of factors that
Sure.
play into the
Well,
freestyle
I think
sparring.
about it a lot. About it's a lot like high school, where like I was a pretty good athlete. I was very good at football, very good at wrestling, just naturally aggressive. And but when I got to play college ball, all of a sudden I'm a good player playing with a bunch of great players, and it was vastly different.
It was different.
Yeah, same thing as an amateur fighter. I was a good amateur fighter. I won a couple titles, but when I went to pro, I was like, oh, this is a whole nother level, and I just couldn't dedicate myself to
Yeah.
the world of that well enough to excel to the next, to the hierarchy of that level. Yeah. So, what about your personal life? Have you ever had to use your martial arts, or do you see where it served you in your personal life? Either
Yes,
literally.
it's a daily, the breathing,
Okay.
the meditation.
Okay.
There have been a few instances where, for instance, on the metro going to or from downtown Portland, and somebody squared off with me, and I would just smile and lean in and say, "That's a pretty big tree, buddy. You sure you want to bark up that one?" I wouldn't recommend it, and that's all it took.
Yeah.
You know. So fortunately, it's let's see, I got mugged once on my way home from a karate practice. I was a brown belt, probably first cue, so just before black belt. And I'm riding my 10-speed bike home, probably 10 o'clock at night. I had just been at a very high level. You know, some instructors have a way of drawing it out of you even more, right, in the course of the practice. And this was one of those nights. And so I was covered with snot and sweat. My soaking wet gi was tied onto the handlebars. And I see this kid in a black trench coat up in the distance there, sitting on the curb, and he gets up, and I could tell that he's pretending like he's drunk walking across the street. And it's not computing. It's like, next thing I know, I just figured I would just go around him, right? Because he's already on the other side of the road. And sure enough, he comes on a dead run at me. My left fist greeted him right there and crushed it. I know that. He dropped like a sack of rags. Problem for me was I forgot that I was on the bike, essentially. I was so focused on that punch. And then, so just fell off the bike. I happened to have a writing implement, a pen, in my hip pocket, and I fell onto that, and that gave me a dead leg. And so I get up slowly, and I hear somebody running from behind, and the idea is to just kick, right? That's what my spirit said, and the leg said, "No, not happening tonight." And so
I was not listening.
So he jumped on my back, and then it was interesting to see my mind go to, well, he's at an advantage now. So if I do anything, I got to maim him, right? And I guess I didn't really want to do that, because another thought came, well, what does your training say? And the answer came, one at a time, right? And so my focus went back to the guy. He's still just like a sack of potatoes in the street there. And then I said, okay, and made the decision to throw, and I'm going to try to put my fingers in his eye socket, grab his face like a bowling ball and bring him over. That was what came to mind at the time. But as I did this, there's another person and another person and another person.
She wasn't alone.
Yeah. And then, so fortunately, they weren't stone cold killers. There was a pistol pointed in my face, or a gun, and backlit with a street light. I could see all the rounds, and so I'm just watching and waiting for the flash, and clear mind, that whole Mushin thing, right? No mind in meditation. That's as close as I have ever been, just nothing. And I heard my voice say, well, you got to do something. And then I heard my voice say again, why don't you try yelling? And at this point, they had me pinned down. My elbows were under me. And when I yelled, I just, big, deep breath. I was immersed in training at the time. So whatever came out when I yelled, help me, was enough that they loosened up. And so at that, I just yelled again, and they all ran away. So fortunately, they weren't just stone cold killers, and
they were just looking to take advantage of an opportunity.
It was interesting. About 2 weeks later, a buddy in the dojo said that he had been reading in the newspaper that there was a group of 5 to 7 kids that was coming over the hill and robbing people in this area for $20. Right? You don't want to hear the whole story of while I'm pinned down and all that. I mean, things like with the gun pointed in my face, they said, where's your money? I said, I'm so broke, I can't even pay attention. I don't have any money, right? I just said, this is stupid, right? And but anyway, I lived to tell about it.
They didn't take your bike?
They didn't take my bike, and it's a high-end Univega racing 10-speed. They did not take my bike. I'm telling you. And but my buddy was telling me, like I said, a week or two later, that he saw this in the newspaper. Then he noticed that he didn't see that anymore after that incident.
Interesting.
Yeah. And our Mr. Oshima says he believes sometimes heaven sends us to just let the bad guys know it's not that easy.
Right? Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I often think about in martial arts and things is it's kind of in line. My mom used to always tell me, God only gives you what you can handle, right? Well, we build ourselves up, and then it's kind of like, a warrior getting ready for a war, and then you're given what you asked for, what you trained for, because you're like, and it's a way to build confidence. It's also a way to test ourselves, and we could argue that maybe we manifested it or it was given to us. Who knows, right? How has martial arts, you talked a little bit about breathing, but how has martial arts affected your life, your training since then, as far as off the mats, beyond breathing, like maybe in relationships, work, fatherhood?
The commitment comes to mind, and commitment to provide and to protect. I believe that as a male of the species, that's what I'm called to. And so through the martial arts, for instance, there was a time where something had come up. I think my wife was sick, and I just went into the dojo and I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to train, while this is going on. And my senior just said, that's your practice. That is your practice.
Yeah.
So do that. Yeah. Right. And I appreciate that. That to me, that was a gift given me. Then I was also a different time. I expressed that something was going on in my family, not anything between my wife and I, but kids and grandkids and that kind of stuff. And I said, I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to have the money to, keep training. And that senior just said, don't be a dick. Don't stay away.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
So different, you meet so many different personalities, wonderful people. and I saw so many excellent examples of human beings, you know, just so nice and genuinely decent people, right? That could kill you 7 times before you hit the ground.
Yeah, that's one thing I realized, especially in my later years of martial arts when I got into amateur fighting, was I started to meet true fighters, like pros, and looking at them outside of the ring, I'm like, they look like guys I could probably handle in the bar, no problem. But knowing who they are in the ring, I'm like, that dude would wreck you. And you know, it's quite humbling. I pray and meditate regularly, and one of the messages I got early on in that process was like a one job, and that's to serve and protect. And serve and protect my family, my loved ones, all those around me. That's my first and foremost job, and that's what I teach my son, who does training martial arts. But I said, you know, you got one job, buddy. Anytime he fails to do that job, I just remember, what's your one job? What's your job? Protect and serve my mother and my sister. You know, and hopefully one day he'll protect me too, because I think he's going to be a bigger boy than I am. So yeah, I think that martial arts certainly teaches that. You know, it's one thing I asked my wife, like I've asked her in the past, like, what do you love me for? Like, what's the biggest thing? And one of the biggest things she says, I've always given her is safety. That she just feels safe. And I'm like, I kind of was, there was part of my ego was like,
Yeah,
I kind
that's
of
not
want
what I
her to
was
say
fishing
my
for.
body or my mind.
Right.
But she's like, you just make me feel safe, you know. And then I'm like, well, then all those years of training and hardship, if that's what it brings, I'm like, you know, I think that's great.
There's value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back, do you feel that your martial arts has changed from its original roots?
It has one aspect, just one tiny crumb is Mr. Oshima at one time took out of the curriculum Akata.
Mm.
I believe it was because he didn't think it was healthy to perform that particular one.
Yeah.
So that's just a crumb of the change. So the coming about of MMA, right? When I first started and when you first started, there was no such thing.
Yeah.
Not on not on the level that it is now, right? Not nearly as possible or popular.
Yeah.
Cobra Kai somehow, that stuff is having some kind of effect. I'm not sure. I hear people talking about that.
But it's a very popular show. It's
Popular
really
TV show.
It's brought Karate Kid back. It's a great little series. It's brought karate back to the forebrain of consciousness in the world, and all of a sudden people are kind of looking back at karate as a potential option. My wife just went back to Mexico with her hometown. She hadn't been there for 20 years, and she, being a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, was looking to potentially do some jiu-jitsu, but it didn't exist there. She said karate, though, was very popular.
Oh, interesting.
And I think I kind of relate martial arts somewhat to a lot of like certain sports, like football. American football predominantly is just in America because it's an expensive sport to play. It requires a lot of equipment and things like that. But soccer is everywhere around the world because it doesn't take much,
right,
and can almost be played without a soccer ball. Really, kick the can, right, or kick a sock. Same thing with certain martial arts. You know, I think karate, tai chi, a lot of some of the more traditional martial arts with katas can be performed quite a bit in your garage, in the field, by yourself.
On rocks, on hills, on grass, on gravel.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't have katas. There are some solo drills, and you can certainly do a lot of drilling and get a pretty decent workout. But it's predominantly based to require a partner. So unless you can afford an expensive little dummy or create your own, it's difficult. Though I've had some buddies who are pretty awesome. They've done some videos where they've done jujitsu with a chair. I've done jujitsu with. I used to have a great boxer that I could throw a gi on, his jacket on, and he'd love trying to pass my guard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely different. I think that can be some difficulty. But so seeing where it came from. So let me ask you this: was your where's your lineage as far as your sensei and where Shotokan originated? What's the do you know that?
The origination is from Okinawa and Jijin Funakoshi.
Mm-hmm.
And then my link to Master Funakoshi is Tsutomu Oshima,
Okay.
Mr. Oshima, and I've trained with him, and
Okay.
I am his black belt.
So your sensei was under the direct originating sensei.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm not really versed in the variations of karate. For me, karate was karate growing up as a kid because I grew up with Karate Kid.
Sure.
And I'm like, it's all karate. It's all open hand, and then kind of like religions. I mean, they all are in worship and love for God, but have a very different name or version thereof, or how they do it, and that's kind of how this whole concept came up, was to talk about martial arts, and I see, I've had a discussion with a couple older martial artists about where did martial arts originate, like what's the, and I'm like, I kind of feel like either Tai Chi, Jiu-Jitsu, and or karate, somewhere there was an origination of what you could do, and it had to be just by yourself. It had to be just for for defense, and you could also think of it,
and it's got to work.
Yeah, and well, but think of it in the sense of creationism, right? And at the beginning there was one thing, and so let's just say there was one being, right? And that one being, before there was another being, had no reason to defend anything, so it just learned to move. And anything with a kata or like Tai Chi is just a one being moving, and that sort of thing. And then we start to create all these different scenarios, right? You get people that, one of the common criticisms of jiu-jitsu is, well, can't defend against multiple attackers. And I've defended against multiple. I've had multiple students come at me and that sort of thing. And I think at the end of the day, we can pick at anything, and it's a situation that's applied that I don't know that any martial art is going to do great against multiple attackers. Like in your situation, it's
Mr. Oshima, when I told him my little mugging story, he just smiled and said, multiple opponents is very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about level, right? I'm pretty sure there are plenty of high-level black belts of any discipline that could do very well against multiple people, provided those multiple people were also lower leveled in all aspects. Physical ability, are we talking multiple like fast, young, strong dudes? Or, I could defend against, multiple teenagers, multiple, people that aren't very physical and capable, right? So the vast majority of martial arts seems to shift commercially. In my point of view, it shifts commercially eventually, if not initially. And you said originally you liked yours because it didn't have that essence, but you've also then you later got into doing some competitions, which that's what I refer to as sport.
Sure.
Do you think
that just wasn't the emphasis?
Yeah. So do you think commercialism has influenced your martial art in any way, away from self-defense? And how do you keep balance in all that?
I would say no. Now, it's been several years since I was in a Shotokan dojo, but I did train for a couple of years in the Portland dojo. I trained for a year and a half with the Kaja Kimbo group over here in Fopo area. And I'm not seeing, I don't know, just the art itself. I'm looking at the art itself, and I know Shotokan people tend to guard that. Like, for instance, the culture of, I was told at one time that if our Mr. Oshima knew that you're a good businessman, he won't let you open a dojo. Because it's not about the business, it's about the art, right? So, and within Shotokan Karate of America, that has remained.
That's an interesting perspective. I think I've been a part of a lot of different schools over my 30 years and of martial arts, and I've seen a good handful of them close because they were a great martial artist, the coach, but business
not a good
there.
businessman. Yes, sir.
And then not even to say, but I don't know, just poor decisions in some aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the other part is we're getting into a reality where, I mean, there's not a lot of physical confrontation anymore. Everybody's behind a screen or a computer or a keyboard. And when we're in person, everybody's super nice to your face, and so other than the occasional tweaker or if you're going out into a violent or dark, shady place, you're kind of already asking for trouble. The likelihood of physical confrontation, I think once, 10, 20 years ago, you used to say the odds are 1 in 4. You're going to get into physical confrontation. I don't know if that's statistically true anymore. You're probably going to get into a verbal, maybe a mental, emotional confrontation. So we all know that martial arts teaches us the outside of defense. But do you see how it's helped you, or has it helped you on the internal, in things with ego, fear, your own desire, delayed gratification, that sort of thing?
Yeah, because the reality is it's all just hard work and discipline, right? There's no magic pill for any of these, right? And I do prefer to talk about the similarities between the different arts. I prefer to talk about the similarities and the differences because there are similarities, lots of similarities. But it comes back to breathing, just to regroup and to come back. If my attitude or whatever gets off base, and then my relationship with Jesus Christ is gonna. I'm accustomed to hearing from him. Humble out, buddy.
Nice.
Humble out, buddy. Yeah. That's a. I hear that often enough. Hopefully I don't need to be told too many times, but I do hear that.
Yeah.
And I get it. I understand.
So do you do see, or do you see a connection to your faith? And as a disciple, would you say you're a disciple of Jesus Christ?
Yes.
Also a disciple of
the Church of Pain.
A disciple of your martial art as well. Do you see a link, or did you?
I do.
Did you create one?
I do, and I can say I created one. If I didn't see one, okay. I did create one. I see physical fitness and physical. Well, I've slowed down a little bit, but that's.
How old are you? 61?
63 this year in April.
So in April. One of the things I've often said is when I get to 75, dude, my goal is to have ice cream for breakfast. I'm like, at that point, I've made it far enough.
Survived this far.
Let's just cruise the rest. That's right. I don't know if it'll work out, but all right. In the final question, if you had one piece of advice or insight for a martial artist to share for someone who's just getting started, who hasn't either has little to no experience in martial arts yet, but has considered it, what would it be?
Keep coming back. And once you start, something I remember Mr. Oshima said, and it's so true. You know, if you miss a week, then it's kind of too easy to miss another week. And then if you miss 2 weeks, then it's a little too easy to miss a month, and on, right? And it's very difficult to get that pot boiling again, right? I've been where the pot is boiling, right? No, any food, it just comes in and gets consumed. You know, and beer and pizza didn't even sound good at one time, right? It just didn't mix, and that's when you're just diligently, consistently practicing and taking what you hear and applying it. There was an equation I was given early in my practice where Shotokan practice tends to be an hour and a half. So for every hour and a half that you spend in the dojo, you're going to spend 45 minutes on your own, in your personal time, training, kata, basics, whatever it is. You know, I did running in the hills there in Southern California, bicycling, on and on. We would, any crazy thing my buddies would come up with, we would just go do it. And so, you know, and I've been that fit before, right? And through that training, whatever fear or anxiety that I had that got me to start, I still don't have, right? It just went away. And I think that was part of the problem for me in the competition when I got into the black belt level, because I'm not afraid anymore, right? And I think that took some, I don't know, I don't want to make excuses, just looking back and observing, you know, because at the black belt level, I had already been through so much and done several special trainings, and I believe I've done 10 special trainings. So.
Well, I think once you've been, you know, been through the fire, burned by the fire, you no longer fear it, but you respect it.
Yes,
right?
sir.
You're not necessarily going to put your hand back.
I'm not looking for a fight.
Yeah, but the best fighter is one who doesn't fight, right? So with that knowledge from your martial arts, I'm just going to ad-lib here and say, what spiritual advice for somebody who's looking to, you know, either improve on their spirituality or already in that early beginning of their journey? I kind of feel like I had somebody ask me recently on when did I start my spiritual journey, and honestly, lately I've kind of realized I've always been on it, just whether you're aware of it or not.
Right.
And but somebody who's maybe purposely trying to, you know, be more spiritual, what advice do you have?
Well, I understand that there is, I'm going to use the term stigma on the martial arts by some people, thinking that it's spiritual in that it's a negative spirituality, right? Like anything that's not of Christ is going to be, right? If it doesn't have a cross over the front door, then it can't be good. I'm not even sure. I just know there's those kind of thoughts, like afraid to get into yoga, for instance, that there's a stigma on yoga because of the old Indian, right? Whatever their spirituality is. I personally have not had a problem with the meshing, because we bow when we enter the dojo. We open the door, step in, bow, just respect, just simple respect for the life and death level of training and life changing that takes place in that dojo. It's respect. And then I would hear people when they would bow, when we're going to do some kind of sparring, you know, the two opponents would bow to each other, and then Hajime, go get, and they would, as they're bowing, they say, please teach me, right? So I would say that too, but in my mind I would say, King Jesus, please teach me, right? And I've been doing that from day one.
Yeah, interesting.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot out there that a lot of people one of the things I think the journey of the soul is us to learn to not to judge, right? Or thou shall be judged, right? And how do we do that? It's a question. It's like, I wonder why certain things. And one of the things I like to say, God bless jujitsu, right? And because it saved me from myself. One of the things that I've learned originally, I used to say, and I've learned to be careful of what I say, but I used to say, I'm my own worst enemy. And therefore, no other person could defeat me, beat me, and that sort of thing. But what I've come to finally understand is that not only was I my own worst enemy, as I was my only enemy, and I was creating a lot of the challenges and the obstacles and my approach to self-defense now is truly stop defending myself and just loving myself. And martial arts is what I hope to teach others. It's a good way to love yourself, right? You're here. The likelihood that you're ever going to have to hurt anybody's getting less and less likely compared to centuries ago when you're fighting on in wars and battles and things where samurai originated. Um, but now you really just have to learn to defend yourself against yourself until you realize you're only fighting yourself. So stop it.
Yeah.
Right. There's some theory. I don't know if you've heard this, and so obviously this what people are watching. I think there are a good 3 or 4 books out there on this topic. But what I've come to think about is, so a good majority of us believe in Jesus, right? And we'll all say he is risen, right? He, rose from the cross, but where did he go? Where did he go? What happened? There's not a lot of time. There's not a lot of discussion afterwards, right? And there are a few books out there. There's a theory. And I don't know this to be a fact because I've not been there. But there's a grave in Japan that honors that's where he lies, right? And he had children, he had a family, and I find it interesting. I just is just theory, and it could be just a fun story, but I like to think about it, and I find some comfort in knowing that he went to India, studied yoga, and then he went on to Japan. I think it's follows the coastline. It's simple enough, logic, and there he originated. Maybe he was one of the originators of martial arts, right? He was the last samurai potentially, right? And truly, whether the origin of martial arts came from jiu-jitsu, tai chi, because he would have traveled through China to get to Japan probably anyway, right? And so there's just something there, but there's several books that speak on this, and even before I was heavily a believer of the man upstairs is I always believed in the word, and I really like that, and I think about that, and so for me, jujitsu means gentle skill, right? And for karate, open hand, right? So I always teach. Oddly enough, I've incorporated karate, even not necessarily being a practitioner of karate. I always teach my students when somebody approaches, meet them with an open hand. Yeah. And I didn't even realize I was saying karate, yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think that spiritually, martial arts wise, religious wise, whatever we want to put out, we're just talking semantics. We could be arguing and literally saying the same thing. You could tell me, oh, karate's the way. And I can be, no, jiu-jitsu's the way. But I'm telling you already, well, no, I'm still going to meet you with open hands. Because I'm going to tell you, hey, is there a problem here? How can I help you? And I'm showing you respect and consideration. I'm not saying, we got a problem here, buddy. Yeah. Because that's not karate. Yeah. That's not jiu-jitsu. No, that's right. I can't grab you and do very good jiu-jitsu with a closed fist. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. you know, thank you guys for watching. This is really a way to hopefully open up the discussion for martial arts, spirituality, religion. I mean, even science.
Let's come
Because
together.
well, because at the end of the day, martial arts, I teach this. This is what I teach students as a man of the word. Martial arts means, for me, martial law. We're talking about the universal law of physics, right? Basic physics proves God exists. Look into quantum theory, quantum physics, and then the whole idea that martial arts. So then the art part is the personalized, the individualistic way of an approach. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Much love.